Hello and welcome back for our fourth MarshWatch webinar. Today we're going to be talking about 4 common species of sparrow, and then we're also going to look at the marsh wren, black tern, tree swallow, and cedar waxwing. So several colorful, interesting looking birds. And we're also going to take a look at the American bullfrog. And I'll also introduce you to some flowering plants. These are emergent plants, so plants that you could find growing on shorelines or in water in various wetlands. So let's start with sparrows. So there are 4 common wetland sparrows that you may encounter, and they are the song sparrow, the savanna sparrow, swamp sparrow, and Nelson sparrow. And sparrows are definitely an identification challenge. So I'm going to walk you through each species, and we'll take a look at the key differences and how you can start to learn how to distinguish these species. So the song sparrow is a medium-sized sparrow with a round head. It has rich brown stripes on the crown and through the eye, and heavy streaking on the chest that meets in a dark spot in the middle. However, one thing to be careful of is that song sparrows vary a lot regionally in their appearance. So if you look at the New Brunswick song sparrow in comparison with the British Columbia song sparrow, you'll see that the New Brunswick song sparrow is much paler, whereas the British Columbia version or variant has this darker gray coloration on the head. So you really have to take the time to learn the appearance of the species in your specific region. And their song is pretty cacophonous, and it starts with several evenly spaced notes, and then it goes into a series of more complicated notes, and then it often ends with a trill. So this is sort of what that sounds like. And song sparrows are very common, so you're probably familiar, at least a little bit, with that song. You'll hear them singing in lots of urban areas, for example. And they don't really have any specialized habitat. You can find them basically everywhere, and they are a common backyard and feeder visitor. So again, you've probably seen song sparrows before, even if you haven't identified them as this species. And they are generalist omnivores, so they eat invertebrates, seeds and grains, and fruit. And the exact food items depend on what is available in their region, so they're very adaptable. They're widely distributed in North America, and so they are resident birds in the most southern portions of Canada, and then they are only present in the breeding season as you move a little bit farther north. So Nova Scotia, they're present year-round, but most of New Brunswick and PEI, they're present only in the breeding season. Now, the savanna sparrow is a medium-sized sparrow, so similar size to the song sparrow. It has sharp streaks on the breast, so kind of thinner streaks than the song sparrow, and it has this distinctive yellow stripe above the eye. And it has a dark stripe that goes through the eye. And finally, it has these brown back and crown stripes. Its song is a 3-part song, which is described as take, take, take it easy, which it descends in the last part. And it has a sweet quality in the first few notes, and then it becomes more buzzy and almost insect-like. So this is what the savanna sparrow sounds like. And their habitat, they are called the savanna sparrow for a reason. They are mostly found in grasslands and open areas with few trees. In terms of specifically wetland habitats, they like sedge wetlands and salt marshes in particular. And they mostly eat insects and spiders, but they will also consume grass and forb seeds in the winter. And they are migratory, so they are present in almost all of Canada during the breeding season. So in terms of looking at the song sparrow versus the savanna sparrow, these are two very similar sparrows, but there are some key differences that can help you to distinguish them. So the song sparrow, again, it has those thick, rich brown and white stripes on the head, and it has heavy streaking on the breast. Whereas the savanna sparrow, it has a more streaky head pattern. It doesn't have those strong stripes, and it has a yellow streak above the eye. And the streaks on the breast are finer than the streaks of the song sparrow. And then, of course, their songs are pretty different. I would say that the song sparrow has a pretty cacophonous song in comparison with the savanna sparrow, which is sweeter and sort of thinner than the song sparrow. Another common sparrow that you're probably going to encounter in any wetland is the swamp sparrow. Again, it's a similar size to the song sparrow and the savanna sparrow. It has a gray face and collar and a dark brown line through the eye. And most distinctively, it has a rusty brown cap and reddish brown on the wings. So it's a little more colorful than the song sparrow and the savanna sparrow. And its song is a slow trill. One thing that's important to note is that the trill can be different speeds for different individuals. So the more you listen to the song of the swamp sparrow, the more you'll get a sense of the quality that you're listening for in that trill, and you'll be able to identify different individuals even if they are singing at different speeds. And their habitat is bogs and fens with open water, freshwater marshes with reeds, rushes, sedges, and cattails. And they eat seeds, fruits, and invertebrates. So often you'll find swamp sparrows hanging out in fairly tall vegetation, such as stands of cattails. And they are mostly a migratory species in Canada. So most of the Maritimes, you're only going to see them during the breeding season months. And the final sparrow species that you're likely to encounter in wetlands is the Nelson sparrow. So it is a little bit smaller than the other species, and it has quite striking coloration. So it's got this orangey wash on the face and neck, and a gray cheek patch and nape of the neck. The breast is lightly streaked. There is a black stripe behind the eye and a dark stripe on top of the head. And the song of the Nelson sparrow is quite strange in some ways and not particularly bird-like. So it has this hissing quality, almost like bacon or hot water hitting a hot pan. And it often sings at night. So the song of the Nelson sparrow is probably the most distinctive of all the sparrow species because it is so unusual and insect-like. They occupy various wetlands, and so the Atlantic coast form breeds in tidal wetlands, so salt marshes, and you can find them hanging out in reeds, buckbeans, sweetgrass, willow, dwarf birch, etc. but they can also be found in farm fields and grasslands next to rivers. So their diet includes invertebrates, so a wide variety of insects, spiders, small crabs and mollusks, and ribbon worms. And they also eat various seeds. And unlike the other species of sparrow that we've looked at, the distribution of the Nelson sparrow is much more restricted. So in the Maritimes, you essentially only find them in coastal regions. So sparrows are, again, very difficult to identify, and often you don't get a very good look at the sparrows. So the best way to tell what the species is by their song. So let's take a second now to compare the songs of the 4 species that we looked at today. So the song sparrow is kind of clanky and cacophonous. The savanna sparrow is more sweet, and it has an insect-like quality in the second half, and it's very high-pitched and light in the first half. The swamp sparrow is more simple and pure, and it's a slow trill. Then the Nelson sparrow, again, super distinctive. It has this insect-like quality, like bacon hitting a hot pan. So identifying sparrows takes a lot of practice, but hopefully this gives you a good sense of where to start. Now, another songbird that you may encounter in various wetlands is the marsh wren. So this is a small wren. They're fairly compact, and they have a pretty distinctive bill shape. So it's relatively long, and it has a slight downward curve. Both sexes are kind of rusty brown overall with barred wings and a barred tail. There's a rusty patch on the upper wing and a bold white eyebrow. And one thing to note about wrens is that they also like to hold their tail vertically, as you can see in these images. They glean various prey off of vegetation and the ground. So insects and aquatic insects and spiders are their most common prey items. And they are mostly found in wetlands with cattail and bulrush. So they like to hide in these dense stands of vegetation. And one interesting fact about them is that their nest is a globe-shaped ball of rushes and cattails, and they actually build multiple nests. And their song is a variable kind of gurgly rattle sound, which you can hear in this recording. So the song of the marsh wren initially may sound a little bit similar to a swamp sparrow, but it has more of that gurgly quality as opposed to the pureness of the swamp sparrow song. And marsh wrens, they are only present in Canada during the breeding season. I will say that this map suggests that they are not found in the Maritimes, but they are not as common as maybe some of the other species. Now, another bird that you may encounter, but that is fairly rare in the Maritimes, is the black tern. And both the marsh wren and the black tern are Marsh Monitoring Program target species. So the black tern is a small tern with a straight black bill and narrow wings. Both sexes have a black body, hence the name. They have silvery wings and a silver back and a white tail. And they're pretty distinctive in terms of their flight pattern, and they basically, you can see them flying above water, and they make lots of sharp turns, and they're pretty erratic in their flight. And their habitat, they nest colonially in shallow marshes on floating vegetation, and they forage in wetlands. Their diet, they fly low over wetlands, and they essentially grab insects, fish, snails, frogs, and tadpoles off of the surface. And they can often fly long distances to forage. And their vocalizations are essentially harsh squawks, so pretty simple. And again, in the Maritimes, they are not super common, but they can be found in parts of southern New Brunswick and the Chignecto Isthmus. Now, one species that is much more common in various wetland habitats is the tree swallows. So this is a small aerial insectivore. They have long tapered wings that are very characteristic of swallows and help them to acrobatically forage. They have a slightly forked tail, a pure white belly, and an iridescent blue head and upper parts. The female is slightly less iridescent than the male, but the differences are pretty subtle. And the sounds that tree swallows make are fairly high-pitched and kind of liquid in quality, so they make a mixture of gurgles, chirps, and whines. They are found in a variety of environments near open bodies of water like marshes, wooded swamps, and beaver ponds. And they are aerial insectivores, so they eat a wide variety of airborne insects and other small prey like spiders, roundworms, and mollusks. And they are migratory. In fact, tree swallows are long-distance migrants, like many aerial insectivores. So you will find them across Canada during the breeding season. And our final bird species for today is the elegant cedar waxwing, which is a medium-sized songbird. They have very distinctive coloration. So they have a black face mask with a large crest that is sort of tan brown in color, and they have a little bit of that tan color also on their breast. They have a yellow belly, a gray back and wings, a bright yellow band at the end of the tail, and some individuals have red tips to their wing feathers. So you can see that in the bottom image in this slide, but notice that the waxwings in the top image do not have this trait. And cedar waxwings, although they are songbirds, they don't have a particularly melodious song, so they make a high-pitched, kind of buzzy sound. And they occur mainly in woodlands, but they are also found in fields, grasslands, and urban areas where food is available. And they mainly eat fruits. So a pretty wide variety, including cedar berries, hence their name, but also things like raspberries and dogwood. And they supplement their diet with various insects. And again, they are migratory in Canada for the most part. And so they are only present in the Maritimes, most of the Maritimes, in the breeding season, although there is a small portion of southern Nova Scotia where you may see them year-round. And our amphibian for today is the American bullfrog. So this is a very large frog. They can be up to 20 centimeters long. They are olive green or brown. The back is mottled or lacks patterning, and there are no ridges on the back, which helps to distinguish it from the green frog. And there is a distinctive fold above and behind the eardrum. They're found in various aquatic habitats, and they require large permanent bodies of water for breeding. And their vocalizations the reason they're called a bullfrog is because they do sound a little bit like a cow. So you heard in that recording that their call is very deep, and again, it sounds a bit like a cow mooing. Now switching gears to talk about some plants. I'm going to go through several species of emergent flowering plants that you may encounter on surveys. And again, this information hopefully will help you if you decide to do a marsh monitoring survey. So taking first a look at two species of flowering plants that have purple flowers arranged in spikes. Purple loosestrife and pickerel weed. So purple loosestrife, it is an invasive species. They have bright purple flowers, again, arranged in these spikes, these vertical clusters. They have square stems and paired leaves with a smooth edge, and the leaves are at right angles on the stem. And they are found in ditches, wet meadows, marshes, and lake edges. Pickerel weed, in contrast, the flowers are more bluish purple as opposed to the bright purple of loosestrife. They have round stems rather than square stems, and they are 3 to 4 feet tall. They have alternate waxy green leaves, and the leaves are an arrowhead or heart shape, which is pretty different from the leaf shape of the purple loosestrife. And pickerel weed is found in water up to 3 feet deep. So again, these two species do not grow in the same kinds of habitats. Pickerel weed is much more adapted for growing in the water as opposed to purple loosestrife, which is found in slightly drier habitats. Now, two species of plants with white flowers that you may encounter are buckbean and broadleaf arrowhead. So both of these species have white individual flowers on stalks. However, buckbean, the flowers have 5 petals, and they also have these interesting fuzzy looking hairs. Whereas the arrowhead, there are only 3 petals per flower, and they don't have those fuzzy hairs. The buckbean grows to be up to 10 inches tall, so it's fairly low growing. And arrowhead grows a little bit taller, up to 2 feet tall. And buckbean has stalked leaves. The leaves are rounded, and they have smooth leaflets. So there are 3 leaflets per leaf stalk. And leaflets essentially look like mini leaves. Whereas arrowhead has basal leaves, meaning they only grow at the base of the plant. And like the pickerel weed, they are an arrowhead or heart shape, but the cusp, meaning the indentation, is very deep. And buckbean is found in wet soils or shallow water. Often the soils are acidic, so you can find it in bogs and fens and marshes. Whereas arrowhead is found in shallow water and sometimes grows submerged. So it prefers slightly deeper water than buckbean. Now, 2 other species that you may encounter are silverweed and marsh cinquefoil. Now, silverweed has these yellow individual flowers on stalks, and the flowers have 5 petals. Whereas the cinquefoil, they have magenta star-shaped flowers with 4 petals per flower, which are technically actually sepals. And this plant, it's kind of sprawling with stems up to 2 feet. It has compound leaves with jagged edges, so 5 or 7 leaflets per leaf. And it's found in shallow water in swamps, marshes, bogs, fens, and lake edges. And silverweed, it grows up to 8 inches tall. So again, both of these species are pretty low growing. And the leaves are basal and pinnate, so meaning they are paired. And the leaves have jagged edges. So both species have jagged edges to their leaves, but silverweed has silvery undersides, which is why it is called silverweed. And it is found in terrestrial habitats, as opposed to growing actually in the water. But it does tolerate waterlogged soils. And another species that you might encounter is yellow sweet clover. Now this is an invasive species. It has yellow sweet smelling flowers on short stalks arranged around a central stem. So it sort of looks like the flowers are growing on spikes, but they are actually growing on these little stems. And this plant grows to between 2 to 6 feet tall and has alternate compound leaves. So the leaves are not growing from the same spot on either side of the plant. They're growing in staggered spots. And the leaflets have jagged edges. There are 3 leaflets per leaf. And it is found in grassy or disturbed areas. It's not tolerant of standing water or acidic soils, but you can find it in wetlands that have less acidic water, so fens as opposed to bogs, or you can also find it in sort of moist areas, not actually growing in the water. And finally, we have horsetails or equisetum. And these are really interesting plants. They are living fossils, so they are very primitive vascular plants. They are believed to be one of the first vascular plants to evolve. They have distinctive segmented stems, as you can see in the images, and their leaves are very primitive. They are similar in shape to pine needles. And there are 2 species that you may encounter. One is the common horsetail, which has these leaves that are arranged like a bushy horse's tail. You can see in the top left image here. And the water horsetail has leaves arranged in a circle like the spokes of a bike wheel. And because these are very primitive plants, they reproduce via spores as opposed to having pollen. And the spores are held in cone-like structures at the tips of some stems. So you see a few images of that on the right here. And their habitat, so common horsetail grows in moist, open areas, and water horsetail grows in muddy or still waters. So along freshwater shorelines, in marshes, and so on. And that brings us to the end of our 3rd ID session for MarshWatch. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And you are always free to contact us with any questions and follow us on social media. And we hope to see you for our final and 5th webinar.